few years ago, I became interested in an Italian crime series called Gomorrah. I must have watched every season of The Sopranos dozens of times, and a friend of mine recommended Gomorrah to me, selling it to me as an Italian version of The Sopranos, but 100 times darker and more brutal. Needless to say, I was hooked and binge-watched the first 2 seasons in a week, often with my phone handy so I could text my friend things like, "Oh my God, this show is awesome," every once in a while, and thank him for introducing me to this show. But soon after, I was scrolling through Instagram and noticed that I was getting sponsored ads in Italian. I thought it was just a bug in the app's algorithm or something, and didn't pay much attention. But then it went, and I got all kinds of ads for products and services that were only available in Italy. I'm a little embarrassed that it took me this long to make the connection between the Italian ads and the fact that I was watching Gomorrah, but when I finally got it, it actually gave me goosebumps. My phone was listening to me. My phone was playing audio from the TV show somewhere, which then tailored sponsored posts from my Instagram feed to things they thought I could buy. But if it then listened to what I was saying and sent all of that to an advertising company or something, there would be literally nothing stopping the government from accessing these same technologies. For years, we've feared George Orwell's 1984 coming true, fearing a totalitarian government putting cameras or microphones in our homes to listen in on us. But do you think Orwell could have predicted that we'd all do this voluntarily? All we had to do was wrap the TV screen in a shiny little package, pair it with social media, and together we'd hand them our privacy on a silver platter. I would have sounded really crazy 20 or 30 years ago if I said something like, "They're listening to us, they're spying on us with our phones." But today it's a given that our devices are recording ambient noise before analyzing it and transmitting keywords to advertisers. And it's not even the fact that it's happening that's scary. It's the fact that no one really cares. No one really cares that we have almost no privacy. I've even heard people talking about Huawei phones saying, "I don't care if the Chinese have all my information. What are they going to do with it?" I use VPNs on almost all of my devices now, and I don't have a smartphone anymore, just a cell phone that I can turn off when I'm not using it. I didn't use voicemail in about 10 years, but now I use it all the time. I find it extremely worrying that we've gotten to this point without thinking about anything other than, "Ooh, my phone now has a camera," or, "Oh, my phone now has internet." I thought these guys who believed in conspiracy theories were just a bunch of weirdos, but if they were right about our phones, what else are they right about? Back when this whole ISIS thing started in Iraq and Syria, I remember a friend of mine showed me an Instagram account run by a group called the Peshmerga. They were a militia made up of Kurdish fighters, who were ethnically separate from Arabs but still Muslim. However, for some reason they were being persecuted by these ISIS guys, so they were at war with them. They were posting all these fight videos and pictures of themselves with captured ISIS gear, weapons, ammunition, vehicles, all sorts of things. They were posting pretty shocking stuff, so I followed the account, and of course their posts would pop up in my newsfeed every now and then as I scrolled. One day I saw a picture of them with someone who I thought was a kid captured by the ISIS. He was all bloody and looked pretty bad, but the caption on the photo was in Kurdish, so of course I couldn't figure out what it meant. It's a good thing there's Google Translate, because even though the translation wasn't perfect, there was a Kurdish option, so I could get an idea of what it said. Some of the words must have been misspelled, or they were using Kurdish slang because some of the words couldn't be translated. But like I said, I had an idea of what the captions on the photo said, and even if these Islamic State guys were or are bastards, what I read was extremely disturbing. I don't remember exactly what the post said, but the translated words were like vote, mercy kill, and then like a number of hours. It didn't take a genius to figure out what these Peshmerga guys were proposing. They wanted their Instagram followers to decide whether the captured prisoner should live or die. And as you can imagine, almost all of the responses were one-word responses that could be translated as yes, kill him, do it, and stuff like that. Only a handful of them begged them not to, giving reasons like, "You're no better than them," "We're not barbarians," and other variations on that theme. I remember being really shocked because the time limit was only 2 or 3 hours, and even though the post had only been up for half an hour, there were literally hundreds of comments telling them to kill that guy. I remember sharing the post with a friend who first showed me the account. We spent hours discussing how horrible it was, whether or not the prisoner deserved to be killed, given what his fellow jihadists were doing. I mean, they were taking slaves, setting up open-air slave markets with women and girls crying, not to mention killing literally hundreds of innocent people in these mass executions in deserts. But in the end, I guess it didn't matter what we thought, because as we were talking, my friend shared a post with me with one of the shocked emojis, you know, the yellow ones, but also a little bit blue. It was a photo of the same prisoner whose photo had been posted a few hours earlier. He was lying in the dirt, with this blank look on his face, with a pool of blood underneath his body. They had done it. They had killed him on the orders of the general Instagram audience. It made my blood run cold. Like I said, I have no doubt that this guy deserved what he got. But knowing that it was done so savagely, put to a vote and then executed, even the people who were supposed to be the good guys might have proven to be just as bloodthirsty and ruthless as the monsters they fought. We can't even judge them. The Kurds were being exterminated there. How would you react if your people were being slaughtered or sold into slavery? You would want to fight too, and fiercely. The posts were removed and the account was banned shortly after, thankfully. Of course, Instagram couldn't have this kind of content on their platform, but as soon as the admins deleted an account, a new one would appear and post the same pictures and votes. It didn't just happen once. I've seen application votes like this posted over and over again. I don't think I've ever looked at people the same way since. Like, I know this all happened on the other side of the world, but I think we can all agree that, deep down, people are the same everywhere. We can be kind, generous, compassionate, but no, we all have within us the capacity to be cold, bloodthirsty, and even monstrous. Jocelyn Khanna was born on March 14, 1990 in Anaheim, California, before growing up near Lake Elsinore. Jocelyn began modeling for local magazines at the age of 17, but gained much of her fame when she was featured on the cover of Lowrider magazine. Jocelyn has also appeared in World Star Hip Hop's Valentine's Day special, Gerardo Ortiz's music video for his single Imbesa, as well as a number of other magazine and music videos. This fame led Jocelyn to launch her own swimwear brand, leveraging her popularity on Instagram to sell her products to her impressive 13 million followers. Her Instagram is much like what you would expect from a so-called influencer. A collection of semi-nudity photos of herself, accompanied by many others cataloging none other than her numerous travels across the United States and Latin America on a private jet. She attended various modeling events in New York and Los Angeles. She was also known for her rather large butt, which earned her the nickname of the Mexican Kim Kardashian. But Jocelyn seemed to have the intelligence to complement her beauty, with her LinkedIn profile indicating that she studied microbiology at San Diego State University. She was smart and beautiful, with conservative estimates of her income suggesting that she earned over $100,000 from various endorsements and swimsuit sales. But for Jocelyn, that wasn't enough. In December 2020, Jocelyn scheduled an appointment with a plastic surgeon in Colombia to undergo what was called a Brazilian butt lift, BBL. During Brazilian butt lift procedures, fat is taken from different parts of the body and essentially contoured to the buttocks to make them appear fuller. This procedure is increasingly popular in the United States, quickly becoming the most requested type of plastic surgery. According to 2015 statistics from the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, the rate of butt lift procedures increased by more than 200% between 2000 and 2015, with the total number of surgeries increasing from 1,356 to 4,767 during that time. However, injecting fat into the butt can cause serious problems if done incorrectly, including fat embolism, a process in which fat enters the bloodstream and blocks a blood vessel. Jocelyn's butt lift was supposed to happen in early December, but around the same time, reports of her tragic death began to surface. Her cause of death has not been confirmed by her family, but Instagram influencer Lyra Mercer seemed to know why she died, tweeting on December 7th, "OMG, Jocelyn Kano died in Colombia during crazy surgery." A 3-hour live stream of what is supposed to be her funeral was broadcast on YouTube, where her loved ones can be seen paying their respects to the young woman in a casket next to a large photo of her. The attendance was small and intimate, mostly due to the pandemic, but watching the live stream, you can see that Jocelyn's family was absolutely devastated by the news of her death, and that she leaves behind 2 young children. The estimated mortality rate for Brazilian butt lifts is 1 in 3,000, according to plasticsurgery.com, and it seems likely that Jocelyn's death was the result of complications following the procedure, making her one of the unfortunate victims of this procedure. Others are wondering why representatives for the Cano brand have not confirmed the news, with one follower lamenting that, since it's her brand, at least it's her name. You should make a statement. I mean, she had over 12 million subscribers after all. The lack of confirmation has only fueled rumors that Jocelyn may actually have died following the Brazilian butt lift procedure, and that those now in charge of her business fear that the way she died won't hurt her brand. After all, they also benefit from the feeling of vanity that has emerged due to the superficial culture of Instagram influencers. Last year, an online publication of information reported a shocking increase in the lifting of the fesses on the Black March, inspired in part by what the Snapchat dysmorphia calls the condition consisting of being disconnected from one's body due to constant exposure to the highly retouched body or modified on the social networks. The reason is that the varieties of social media axes on the beauty which is extremely tameable for the mental health of women, which makes the attentions unrealistic as much as their appearance, or their lifestyle, but it seems the same is true for their physical health too, with surgical shortcuts to certain body types literally killing a handful of young women in recent years. I think we can all agree that it's downright terrifying that such pressures can be felt so deeply by women that they choose to risk their lives to achieve a certain societal standard of beauty, and that intelligent, successful people can be so strongly influenced by what they see online that they opt for obviously dangerous surgical procedures. Jocelyn Cano didn't need to die. That much is clear. But the question is, how many more young women will have to lose their lives before we learn to love what we were naturally born with, instead of desiring an unattainable standard? And how much blood do we have on our hands for allowing such a standard to exist in the first place? When Sinead McNamara, a 20-year-old from New South Wales, Australia, received a job offer to work aboard the super yacht known as the Mayan Queen of Furs, she saw the opportunity of a lifetime. So much so that the young part-time model sold nearly everything she owned to afford a plane ticket to Europe. She got the job partly because she had experience on similar vessels, but the $190 million luxury yacht was by far the most extravagant she had ever had the opportunity to sail on. The yacht was owned by Mexico's second richest man, billionaire Alberto Bayer, and was his home on the seas as he traveled around Europe, living a life of pure luxury. In August 2018, the Mayan Queen was sailing around the many Greek islands in the Aegean Sea, and Sinead was taking full advantage of the breathtaking scenery, racking up nearly 20,000 followers on her Instagram account. Sinead also posted a lot of photos of herself, and it's easy to see why the young woman was able to get a part-time job as a model. It's also not hard to see why photos of a beautiful young blonde surrounded by beautiful Greek scenery attracted so many visitors to her page. However, despite the image of a perfect, carefree existence she projected, it became clear to some that Sinead's life was far from perfect. At one point, the young woman called her mother in Australia to complain that she had been involved in a violent argument with another crew member working on the Mayan Queen, who appeared to be fearful for her safety. The next day, a passing boat spotted the Australian model hanging from the stern of the yacht, tangled in a series of thick ropes. The crew of the Queen Maya were alerted, and the captain of the boat, who asked not to be named, said he discovered Sinead's body at around 1:45 a.m. and started screaming for help. Doctors and police tried to revive her for around half an hour, but when she started to slip into a coma, she was rushed to a hospital in Athens. Sadly, she died in the helicopter carrying her to the mainland. The man who examined her body, Greek coroner Ilias Bogiokas, concluded that due to the circumstances of her death, he initially assumed Sinead had indeed committed suicide, as no stimulant drugs such as cocaine or sedatives such as cannabis or heroin were used. which were not found after toxicology analysis. This means that the girl was not under the influence of such substances, he said. She had a clear mind and was most likely dealing with social problems, finding herself in a psychological dead end. But we don't know if someone pushed her into this situation, if there was a moral instigator. The coroner also made it clear that questions still remain about the case and that much more would need to be known about the events that led to her hanging to make a clear and definitive judgment on the manner and motive of Sinead's death. What is horrifying to hear is that Sinead's body was in such a state that the coroner advised her family not to see her body, even though this is standard practice for identifying a person's remains. What was so disturbing about her body that the Greek authorities would forgo such a crucial step in the identification process? After an initial investigation by the Greek Coast Guard, the Mayan Queen 4 was allowed to leave Kefalonia after questioning the yacht's crew. The Mayan Queen 4 is equipped with CCTV cameras, and footage of the incident has been seized by the Greek authorities. This footage allegedly showed Sinead moments before her body was found, although the video has not been made public and for some reason has not even been made available to the coroner. The footage apparently showed Sinead in high spirits before her body was found hanging from the back of the boat. She was dancing on tables and drinking cocktails, hardly the state of mind of someone on the verge of suicide. If so, then our attention is drawn to the altercation with other crew members, the one she complained about to her mother and admitted to being scared about. Was Sinead's murder a cover-up by someone who co-opted the Greek authorities to help them cover up the events that led to her murder? It is not entirely out of the question that Alberto Bayer, who is worth around $10 billion, would have the financial wherewithal to bribe government officials in a cash-strapped country like Greece. Perhaps even more terrifying than the idea of a murder plot is the casual indifference with which her death has been treated by people online. "You live for attention, now you have it," one commented, while another added, "Unfortunately, the high price you pay for this type of lifestyle." But some have insisted that there is plenty of evidence to suggest her death was indeed a suicide. In a cryptic Instagram post written 2 weeks before her death, Sinead wrote, "My head is everywhere today," alongside emojis of a volcano, tornado, and a needle dripping blood. There are also many who have claimed that Sinead ended a turbulent romantic relationship shortly before her death, and that this may have contributed to feelings of depression or self-harm. Her death also occurred on what was believed to be her last day as a crew member on the yacht, raising the question of whether she was so depressed about leaving the luxury surroundings that she may even have been forced to return to Australia because there were no more spaces available on the yacht. Luxury yacht, she would have preferred to end her life rather than return to a more ordinary life. Perhaps, and this is perhaps the most terrifying thing of all, humans are capable of reaching such heights that they are simply incapable of continuing to live if they cannot continue to live in the way they are used to. It is possible that at just 20 years old, Sinead felt that she had reached her peak and that everything else in her life would pale in comparison to the time she had spent on the Maya Queen. So, rather than continue with her life and make her days on the yacht a happy if distant memory, Sinead could have chosen to end her life, as the saying goes, die young and leave a beautiful corpse. 24-year-old Russian Ekaterina Karaglinova had a life that many of us can only dream of. She was young, beautiful, intelligent, and highly educated, practicing medicine as a dermatologist after graduating from Pirogov Medical University. She also held an internship at a prestigious medical school in the Russian capital, Moscow. To top it all off, she recently came in second in a Moscow beauty pageant. Ekaterina was also a prominent social media personality in Russia, regularly sharing images of herself with hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. Known as @KatieLovesLife, she ran a blog chronicling her luxurious travels across Europe, posing in places including Italy, Austria, and Spain. Her latest Instagram photo showed her relaxing in a pool in Greece, expressing her love of international travel. It was very nice to escape the rain and cold for a few days to the Ionian Sea. She also captioned her photo of herself holding a glass of wine by the pool. "Now I prefer to travel very often, but for a short time. Study and work do not allow for long-term travel, but the impressions of these short trips remain the most vivid. However, one of her close friends, Marina Nicotina, began to notice that not everything was right in her seemingly perfect life. She claims to have observed a drastic change in Ekaterina's behavior during the summer of 2019, and when questioned about it, the young doctor, traveler, confessed that she had made a rather dangerous enemy and that someone is interested in my private life in the worst possible way. Then, in July 2019, Ekaterina's family contacted the Moscow police, concerned that they had not heard from her for several days. Her friends noted that she had recently started a new relationship and was planning a trip to the Netherlands to celebrate her birthday on July 30th. Most people may have been busy with travel arrangements or simply too busy with their vacation to provide updates. But we know that Ekaterina posted almost religiously on her Instagram account, and the fact that she hadn't done so for several days was what worried her family the most. Deeply concerned for her well-being, Ekaterina's family contacted her landlord, who, after some reluctance, agreed to allow them access to her apartment. There, they found no signs of disorder. Her affairs appeared to be in order, and there were no obvious signs of violence. However, in the hallway, there was a heavy suitcase filled with more than just luxury clothes. Her family was horrified to discover Ekaterina's decomposing body inside. She had been dead for nearly a week, with a large gash in her throat and several additional stab wounds to her chest and abdomen. After examining the crime scene, police were unable to locate the murder weapon, and there were no signs of forced entry or serious struggle. Of course, police checked her Instagram account for clues that could point them to her motive for murder. They saw Ekaterina hinting at a potential romance on her Instagram account, sharing photos of bouquets accompanied by notes. Another surprise from Mr. Weeks. I've been receiving bouquets and notes from a secret admirer. I wonder who it could be. It was speculated that such a public display of romantic interest might have angered a former lover, perhaps someone who couldn't bear to see the young doctor in a new relationship. Police later discovered that CCTV footage had captured an ex-boyfriend of Ekaterina's, who appeared to have visited her apartment days before she went uncontactable. Ekaterina had just broken up with Maxim Garyeva, 32, a few weeks earlier, and had confided in friends that he had taken the breakup very badly and was a wolf. The man entered the Moscow apartment building wearing a baseball cap, apparently to shield his face from CCTV. He is then seen leaving the apartment approximately 4 hours later, wearing a completely different outfit, which police interpreted as the one he was wearing when he entered was now covered in blood. The police quickly returned Maxim, who realized that the rupture had been difficult for him, Ekaterina the insulting and humiliating with multiple reprisals, despite the fact that he had given her a considerable silver sum in the course of their relationship. Maxim, to declare that he is ready to say that he is laid and that he is a cosmetic surgeon, could not help him. Before they broke up, Ekaterina allegedly told him it would take a year before he could save enough money for them to meet again. This led to theories that the young doctor was resorting to some form of prostitution to fuel her extravagant lifestyle, charging men exorbitant sums to go out with her. It was then that Maxim confessed that he could not stand this kind of treatment and had snapped. He later confessed that he had stabbed Ekaterina in the neck and chest with a knife at least 5 times, saying that he regretted what had happened and promised to cooperate with the investigation. "She half turned around and I hit her in the neck," he said in a confession recorded to Moscow police. "She tried to escape into the bathroom and lock the door. I pulled her out of the bathroom. Her blood was running down her body. Then, in the hallway, she started screaming. I covered her mouth and stabbed her again in the chest with a knife. She then ran into the living room and started fighting with me, but I was in a state where I felt no pain during the fight. She fell down and I hit her 2 more times in the neck. Then she had convulsions and died." Maxim was tried for the murder, and he allegedly held his face in his hands in court because he thought he was ugly, revealing the depth of his own vanity. Character witnesses spoke of being called Ken, a reference to the Barbie doll, because he was obsessed with cosmetic surgery and his general appearance. Maxim insisted that the murder was not premeditated and told the court that it was a spur-of-the-moment act, something that happened because of the rage he felt after Ekaterina had so profoundly insulted him and his appearance. "I want to apologize to Katya's parents. I'm truly sorry," he told the Instagram influencer's family before being sent to a prison outside Moscow. It seems that the world of Instagram influencers and those who are attracted to its veneer of perfection are just as susceptible to falling victim to its superficial plastic culture as we are. Here is an accomplished young woman who apparently couldn't live without the trappings of luxury she clearly felt entitled to, who as a result became involved with a man she believed to be so inferior to her that she could verbally abuse and publicly humiliate him without suffering any consequences. By no means did Ekaterina deserve to die for what she did, but by delving into the superficial lifestyle of an Instagram influencer, what is clear is that she opened a Pandora's box of sorts that seems to have set her on the path to her doom. Alexis Sharkey was born in Houston, Texas in 1994 to father Mike Robineau and mother Stacy. After graduating high school, Alexis studied biology at the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. But after graduation, she didn't seem to be in a rush to get a teaching job and instead landed a job at a high-end hair and skincare company called Monet. She was still working for Monet when she started gaining a large following on Instagram, a photography-based social media app. A combination of her natural beauty and luxurious lifestyle captivated users. She and her husband, a wealthy consultant from West Texas who was 26 years her senior, would often vacation, and Alexis never missed an opportunity to document her travels by sharing photos with her followers daily, not forgetting to share images of the couple's extravagant life in Houston, the place they called home. Her posts have been viewed, liked, and shared by tens of thousands of people, and as of December 2020, Alexis had over 69,000 followers. As you may know, Instagram users with large numbers of followers are often approached by private companies offering them large sums of money in exchange for advertising their products, and Alexis was no exception. Soon, while working full-time selling products for Monet, which has since been accused of being nothing more than a multi-level marketing company, Alexis secured endorsement deals that skyrocketed her income to even higher levels than her consultant husband. But all was not well in the Sharkey household. A close friend of Alexis admitted that she recently told him she was filing for divorce. Some had always doubted their relationship, as Tom was much older than her, and aside from an intense attraction, the couple seemed to have little in common. Yet for some reason, Alexis did not leave the apartment they shared, even though she and Tom were apparently separated. However, she saw an opportunity to get away from Tom when Thanksgiving weekend gave her the chance to stay at a friend's house for the celebration. She told her soon-to-be ex-husband that she would be returning for the weekend, but on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, Alexis's mother, Stacy, received a call from Tom saying that Alexis was missing and that he had not heard from her since Friday. A few days later, on November 28th, Alexis's mother wrote on the social media site Facebook that her daughter had not been heard from in more than 24 hours, adding that the police were involved and that Alexis was last seen in Houston area. This was especially concerning for Stacy, as she had not seen her daughter since the previous Christmas due to travel restrictions caused by the pandemic. Alexis had planned to return to her parents' home in Pennsylvania for Thanksgiving, but as the number of cases continued to rise in the United States, the family decided it was much safer for Alexis to stay in Texas. But on the same morning that Stacy posted her cry for help on Facebook, a garbage man employed by the city of Houston saw something unusual on the side of the road. At first, he simply thought it was some kind of mannequin due to the object's lack of clothing and the stiffness of its limbs. But his supervisor, a man named John Richardson, later said the employee sounded terrified when he called him, saying he noticed the apparent mannequin looked a little too lifelike upon closer inspection, and that he suspected the situation was much worse. John drove to where the so-called mannequin was lying on the side of the road, then quickly called 911 when he saw that it wasn't a mannequin at all, but a lifeless human body. The moment of realization traumatized him, and he later told a local radio station that the body image had plagued his mind every day since he discovered it. 2 days later, on November 30th, The Houston Police Department held a press conference at the time to announce that they had identified the body as Alexis Sharkey. I am a future ex-mari to receive a call from the local coroner's bureau asking him to identify the body of a powerful man. They savait immédiatement qu'il s'agissait d'Alexis. Mais il to find the strength of s'y rendre où il la finde allongée sur une table de médecin légiste, mortis mais sans signe évident de blessure. Pourtant, à son grand effroi, après que le news de la death d'Alexis ait commencé à circuler, il commençait à entendre des rumeurs selon lesquelles there is a misfortune, which is apparently the cause of her death. Anonymous accounts from people claiming to be friends of Alexis had told a number of online publications that the separation from her husband had caused enormous tension in their home, a tension that had boiled over into hatred. These anonymous friends claimed that Alexis herself had told them that some intense arguments had escalated into violence more than once, and that her husband had hit her on one occasion. Suddenly, Tom Sharkey found himself in the media spotlight, and for entirely negative reasons, in what became a whirlwind trial by the media, fueled by speculation on social media. Tens of thousands of angry people assumed that Tom was the murderer, and he began receiving a series of death threats. It certainly didn't help that at first, Tom refused to comment on his wife's death, but as the threats against him became more and more tangible, he made a statement to a local ABC affiliate. She understood me, I understood her. We weren't fighting. When she left, I just told her she shouldn't drive under the influence, he said, clearly implying that Alexis was drunk the night she left her friend's Thanksgiving celebration. He also seemed to insist that there were no problems in their marriage and that they were not in the process of divorcing. This was confirmed by Alexis's mother, who said her daughter would have spoken to her if she had marital problems. When the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences performed an autopsy on Alexis's body, they told reporters that they could not rule out the possibility of foul play. This only reinforced her mother's suspicions that she was murdered. I firmly believe she was murdered because of the way her body was dumped, Stacy said. It strikes deep into the soul that something very evil happened here, and I want to find out the truth. Friends said she confided to them during a recent trip to Mexico that she feared for her life, though she apparently didn't say why she had such suspicions. But if that was the case, who exactly killed Alexis? Police appear to have all but ruled out the idea that she was murdered by her husband, as he quickly volunteered to cooperate with them after her death, and has since said they believe it's only a matter of time before arrests are made. So it's possible that Alexis's murder was linked to her career selling beauty products for Monet. Not only has Monet been accused of using illegal multi-level marketing techniques, but the quality of its products has also been questioned. The year before Alexis's death, Monet was reportedly investigated by the Florida Attorney General after hundreds of complaints claimed its products caused a range of hair and skin problems. The company was permanently banned from using false or misleading claims in the marketing and sale of its beauty products and was fined $1 million, in addition to facing class action lawsuits from those who, after using the products, claimed to have suffered hair loss, baldness, and itching. Alexis was a prolific saleswoman for Monet's products, once receiving a check for $10,000 as the winner of a sales contest from the company. That would certainly be a lot of women who could blame her for essentially disfiguring them. It is also very likely that since Monet's MLM tactics would have left many people broke, at some point, Alexis could have deceived one of her subordinates and caused her to lose a lot of money. Perhaps just before news of Monet's shoddy products broke in the media, leaving her possibly completely unable to sell a large amount of stock she had purchased. This would undoubtedly leave one person angry, vindictive, perhaps even murderous. And besides, the anger of a betrayed woman is merciless if this is the case, and Alexis's death is intrinsically linked to her sales for Monet. It seems that her status as an Instagram influencer actually led to her death. The influence she exerted over her followers undoubtedly led to an increase in sales, thus increasing the potential for victims for Monet's frankly dangerous products. It's very possible that without Instagram she might not have made the sale to this person who was disturbed enough to seeking revenge when her skin started to blister, her hair started to fall out, or her scalp started to itch unbearably. It seems we will soon find out who is responsible for Alexis's death, but if it is related to social media, it would be very ironic that a medium who brought opportunity and new beginnings to so many people led a young woman to her end. My name is Honey. I'm almost 30 and I use Instagram to share photos of my art. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Honey is a weird name, so please don't tell me what I already know. No, it's not a nickname. My parents are from California and are hippies through and through, so you get the idea. As you can probably imagine, I grew up in an overly loving and pacifist environment, which I'm sure might seem nice at first, but let's just say it left me completely unprepared to deal with some of the darker aspects of life. Needless to say, I really struggled with my mental health in my late 20s. I don't want to completely blame my parents for this. I think they did their best, but they really didn't help me with their fill your heart with love stuff when what I needed wasn't actual therapy and antidepressants. I eventually got access to professional help, but in the meantime, what really kept me going was my art. Before I started suffering from depression and stuff, I was painting and drawing pretty basic things. Landscapes, portraits, flower arrangements, that sort of thing. But when I started really suffering, I poured all my stress, anxiety, and sadness out onto paper, and as weird as it sounds, that's when my art really started to thrive. It was probably the only glimmer of hope that ever came out of my poor mental health. The more I posted my new, darker work on Instagram, the more attention it got. My follower count exploded, I got offers to order. I even managed to partner with a t-shirt merch company and make a few sales like that too. Like I once drew a pizza demon and it made me a few $100s from people wanting it on a t-shirt. So when I say dark, I really mean I started drawing really creepy stuff. The pizza demon was probably the most lighthearted thing I had done at that point, and even then people were saying it was super twisted. So as you can imagine, there were some pretty disturbed people among my new followers. I don't say this to complain or be mean or anything. I say this because one guy in particular really made my life difficult. So I get a DM from this guy saying he really loves my work and wants a commission piece. Of course I say yes, so he asks me what my rates are. I had no idea what I was doing pricing-wise at the time, so when I gave him a rate of around $80 for an image, he started explaining to me that I needed to value my art more, that my work was just as valuable as anyone else's, and that I should be charging a lot more. I had no idea what I should be offering, so I threw out some random numbers before the guy blew my mind by offering me $1,000 for an A3 image of what I wanted to draw or paint. I couldn't believe it. $1,000 for a painting was more money than I had ever made in my entire life. I got to work right away, and within a week, I had put my heart and soul on paper, sent it in, and received my money via PayPal. Having that kind of affirmation really boosted my spirits to the highest level I've had in months. I felt appreciated, like I had something to contribute to the world. I was still struggling with my own demons, but when I found out that I could learn from them, that I could benefit from something that was haunting me, it was an incredible feeling. I stayed in touch with this guy. I had never been so grateful to anyone in my entire life up until that point, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't think I could get more money from him. He wanted something else to order. We talked a lot, and he told me he was an artist too. I asked him what kind of artist he was, and he told me he worked in very unusual mediums. Of course, this made me even more curious, because I was also going super dark with my art. But he seemed pretty shy about talking about it. I understand that people can be shy about showing their work. I was also really shy at one point, but this guy needed a serious push to show me something. When he finally agreed to show me something, he told me he would do it in one of those self-destructing posts that Insta offers these days. I didn't ask any questions because I knew he would send me one of those self-destructing photos, probably to protect his intellectual property or something. I was a little confused as to why. Who didn't seem to trust me, but hey, I loved the guy, so like I said, I didn't ask too many questions. I waited patiently for him to send me a picture of some of his work. It took a minute or two, but he sent me this picture that self-destructed in 3 seconds, and honestly, I was really excited to see it at the time. But when I saw what it was, even though it was very brief, I really wish I had never seen it. It looked like a goat's head in a jar of some sort, and the liquid it was floating in looked blackish green, and I'm pretty sure it was formalin. But that wasn't all. The guy had made some small modifications to the goat's head, additions that I couldn't make out because of how quickly the image was flashing before my eyes, but what I saw were horrifying. It looked like he had cut the lips so that all of the creature's teeth were visible, and each one had a little symbol carved or written on it. I'm also pretty sure he either chemically altered the creature's eyes or replaced them entirely with some kind of metal or semi-precious stone. They had this weird glow. Like I said, there wasn't enough time to take it all in, but there was a lot more to the creature's head that had been altered. It wasn't the details that really shocked me, but the idea that an animal's corpse had been abused so much just so he could try to make some kind of art out of it. I had questions, so many questions, but the first thing I had to ask him was if it was actually real or just some kind of skull model. He told me it was real, very real, and that he had collected a goat's head from a butcher, preserved it, and then surgically altered it over time, mostly using dental tools apparently for precision. Personally, I thought the whole thing was a disgrace. I'm a vegan and try to be as ethical as possible, but at the same time I didn't want to impose my worldview on this guy, especially since I really liked him. I didn't want to offend him either, so I told him that his work was interesting and amazing, then asked him if he worked with ink and paper or some variation thereof. He said no, that he only worked with skulls, that they were the capsule that contained all the hopes, dreams, fears, and needs of the creature that once belonged to them, and that working with them was somehow sacred. I didn't really know how to respond. In a way, he was right. He sounded absolutely crazy saying that out loud, but I couldn't completely refute his point. It was like talking to some kind of mad genius. A little later, he asked me if I thought it was cruel to work in such a medium. I told him that people might find his work provocative, maybe even questionable, but that it was fascinating nonetheless. Then he asked me if I wanted to see more. Unlike the first time, I had absolutely no doubt that I absolutely didn't want to see any more of this guy's work. But like I said before, I really didn't want to offend him. So what could I do? It took me a lot longer to respond to his message this time, but I finally said sure, and he responded by saying he was going to use a self-destructive message again. I waited a minute or two for the message to arrive, and when it did, I opened the thread and tapped the little thing to reluctantly reveal the message. I was at least a little curious about the goat head thing the first time, but this time I was just horrified by what I saw. It was the head of a monkey, or at least it looked like some kind of primate, and while I thought the goat head had some creepy additions, this was 1,000,000 times worse. It was so horrifying that I only got a brief glimpse of it, then had to look away and lock my phone screen to keep it away from me. I was a little more confrontational with him afterward, telling him that this was considerably creepier than the first one, and that I thought I was a little too sensitive to see more of his work. He asked me why, and I admitted that I had been vegan for a few years, that I really loved animals, and that while I could stand the goat face, I couldn't really handle the monkey head because it looked too human for me. That's when he was like, that's interesting you would say that, and explained that his dream is to work with a human skull, that he put ads on 4chan and other sites asking if anyone would be willing to donate his head after he died, but got no response. He then told me that he was really starting to losing patience and that he feared he would never get the chance to achieve his dream. This whole discussion had reached the height of creepiness at this point, as you can imagine, and it was so fascinating that I was about to opt for blocking, because I no longer felt safe talking to him. So when he finally sent me another self-destructive message, asking if I would be willing to help him get a human head, I immediately stopped responding. I'm not sure if he was actually asking me to kill someone for him or with him, but only the idea of getting an actual human head, never a real life. But I couldn't bring myself to block him, because after all, he was a potential source of sales, and I could make a lot of money from this guy if I could keep him interested in my work. I try not to think about it, but sometimes I get really bad feelings like, what if he realizes I'm ignoring him? What if he decides my head is the one he wants to use to complete his magnum opus? I'm very careful about what I post now, making sure I only post photos of my artwork, and the few landscape photos I have posted on my profile have been removed, just so no one can find out where I live. Because if they find out where I am, I will never feel safe, Not with someone whose ambition is to work with severed human heads knowing where I put mine.